About 8 months ago, I posted a video talking about Project Readjusted 3, a Five Nights fan game that at the time I truly believed to be the most underrated fan game. Surely enough, after I posted the video, I would receive multiple comments asking if it was my favorite fan game. Although it was good, I would put it in my top 10. I just feel like there's better out there. My top 10 list is full of fan games that I'm confident in saying aren't underrated. However, my current top 1 is one that I haven't heard much about. I've mentioned it to some people before, and most haven't heard anything about it, which is pretty odd considering how popular of a series it's in. 5 Shows at Wario's is my current favorite fan game, and I believe it to be perfection, or as close as you can get to it. So I wanted to talk about it. For the 2 people who have never heard of Five Nights at Wario's before, let me give you a quick rundown. Five Nights at Wario's is one of the most iconic Five Nights at Freddy's fan franchises. Its simple design and presentation combined with iconic Nintendo characters made it an ideal candidate for a successful fan game. The developer Wario recognized the success of his fan games and continued to release sequels on a near monthly basis. Despite being rushed out so quickly, they still hold up relatively well after all this time. Wario kept up his pace until the release of Five Nights at Wario's Origins, where he would begin to slow down. He still continued to create fan games, but at a much slower pace than before. It was clear that with his much smaller presence in the community, he wasn't as enthusiastic as he once was. On November 26, 2020, a short teaser for a new mainline Five Nights at Wario's game titled 5 Shows at Wario's was uploaded to his YouTube channel. Wario would post frequent updates on his Games World page for a few months before releasing the game on February 16, 2021. That brings us to today. 5 Shows at Wario's is still highly regarded in the fan game scene. But why is 5 Shows at Wario's so highly praised when its predecessors are often overlooked in the bigger picture? What does it even do differently? At face value, 5 Shows at Wario's is eerily like the other fan games out there. That is, basically the same Five Nights formula with 1 or 2 minor differences. However, this isn't the case. There is one central theme in 5 Shows at Wario's: risk and reward. In quite literally every fan game out there, you're doing your best to survive, and while playing risky can be a strategy later down the line, it's never at the forefront of the player's mind. 5 Shows at Wario's, however, forces the player to be conscious of their choices and to recognize that everything comes with a risk. You might be sitting at home right now wondering, what the hell is this guy talking about? So let me properly introduce you to 5 Shows at Wario's. 5 Shows at Wario's begins with the player finding themselves in a theater. A loud voice tells them that they are going to partake in a massive interactive show. However, in order to prepare for said final show, it'd be best to try 5 easier shows. After the opening cutscene ends, the player finds himself staring down 5 almost identical tunnels. In the bottom left resides a lives counter. This is where the risk and reward comes into play. Each time you enter one of these shows, you risk losing a life upon getting jump scared. However, winning the show will grant you multiple lives depending on the difficulty. The 5 shows are essentially small minigames with the Wario's cast. Playing them normally is easy if you have more than 2 brain cells, so for added reward, there are 2 harder difficulties to play on, Hard and Insanity. While playing on Hard presents a slightly harder challenge, playing on Insanity makes massive gameplay changes and completely changes the game in some cases. Playing on such a high level will always net you around 5 extra lives on completion, which you'll need later. Going from left to right, the first show is the Cellar. In the Cellar, your only real threat is Virus Wario, who will kill you in 5 minutes if you don't complete all your tasks. On the right side of your screen will be a checklist of 4 simple tasks to complete. Only once you complete them all will you be able to leave. These are all relatively self-explanatory. The only one I'll talk about is the brick wall. Choosing this task makes the player look at a brick wall. I know, just super innovative. On the wall is an outline of 4 bricks. Your goal is to find a similar brick on the wall with a mark on it to indicate what order you push in the outlined bricks. This was super confusing at first, but quickly became my favorite task. The second show is Cooking with Emma, and it can be either the easiest or hardest show depending on how patient you are. Your goal is to get 15 ingredients into a bowl by doing small tasks to collect the ingredients. In the bottom right is a patience meter, which slowly depletes over time. The only way to refill the meter is by collecting ingredients. This show is simple if you take your time, but panicking and rushing in will only net mistakes. If you fail a minigame, Virus Waluigi will drop down from above, where you must hide under the counter until it leaves. This will only waste more of your precious time as he takes a little while to go away. The third show is the closest FNAF related segment in the theater. Playing with power leaves you in an office waiting until 6 AM whilst defending yourself from Virus Luigi. He will slowly make his way towards you. When he does, you have to shock him, which will send him back to his starting location. However, shocking him uses power. The only way to regain power is by playing small minigames where you have to collect batteries. Playing with power is a really fun resource management game, as you also have to devote some of your power to charging your computer, as letting it die will pretty much end your run. The fourth show is Safety Tower, and this might just be the most fun mode yet. You are placed at the bottom of a 3x3 grid where you have to proceed to each of the rooms listed on your map. However, before you enter a room, you need to use logic or your tools available to determine if it's safe to enter. You are given soft and hard scans, soft only giving a vague idea with a chance of confirming anything, and hard scans that will give a definitive answer. You are also given a music box, which can lure out any possible threat in a room, and a full scan which can reveal everyone's location on the map. You can move around the map in all 4 directions, but that also means so can the threats. You can see when a door is being opened on your map, if that at all helps. Safety Terror is a super fun logic mode, and it's worth playing just for that. The final of the 5 main shows is a true lie. 5 princesses are lined up in separate halls, and your goal is to find the princess that is telling the truth. You are given 4 prompts that you can ask any of the princesses. This is an issue because there are 5 princesses, so most of your attempts you narrow down the correct princess to 2 options. You still just end up guessing, and you can't ask the 5th princess any questions. This is by far my least favorite of the 5 shows. I remember there being this one question that would always end in a paradox. Thankfully, in Insanity mode, everything changes. You must defend yourself from Virus Wario as he makes his way towards you through one of the 5 hallways. If you see or hear him in the hallway, you must close the gate. You have to worry about Virus Wario while also charging up the power so you can leave. I really enjoyed this change up, and I thought it was a lot more enjoyable than the standard A True Lie. Once you have racked up enough health, you may be ready for the final show. Once you're ready, there's no going back. The final show is the theater's final challenge. All those lives you spent time saving up come down to this. Oh, I also forgot to mention, if you lose all your lives while playing in the final show, your save file gets completely reset. I love this idea, it makes the final show feel more like a final challenge. If you had no consequence for dying, then I'm pretty sure 90% of players would brute force the final show from the start of the game until they beat it. But having the lives you saved up be at stake is a great idea, as you'll need tons of them for the absolute bullet health that is the final show. You touch anything that's a projectile, that's 1 life gone, just like that. That feeling of knowing that your progress for the entire game is on the line sits and feeds at you in the back of your mind. You have little room for error, it makes you paranoid and more likely to mess up. As for the actual level itself, well, it's a basic 2D platformer. At the start of your run on the final show, you are given the opportunity to select a character. On your first playthrough of the final show, you will only be able to select one of 2 characters. As you continue to play through 5 shows, you will be able to unlock other characters to play as in future runs. Make your way throughout the level until you encounter the boss. Demon Wario is a pretty underwhelming final enemy for a level that built up so much more. Dodge a couple projectiles, stomp on his head a couple times, and you're already done. The final show isn't too bad if you just take it slow. After completing the final show, you'll unlock the exit, the second of the 5 different game modes. That's right, after all of that, we've barely even scratched the surface. The exit is a little bit more faithful to the Five Nights at Freddy's style by having you sit in a house for 5 nights waiting for the exit to unlock. After completing each night, you can choose to unlock a nearby room to progress throughout the house. Each room has its own mechanic that needs to be learned. On the final few nights of the exit, the gameplay can get hectic, running through a large set of rooms dealing with all the foes. I've never really seen anything like this before, and it feels great to play. The closest thing I can say this relates to is Five Nights at Wario's 3, where you play in a different room every night. In the exit, you will always start your run in the attic. Once beating the attic, you can choose to unlock either the bedroom or the balcony. As mentioned before, they each have their own mechanics that need to be learned. This means that your playthrough of the exit could be completely different each time, which is something I really like as it adds some replay value to try the other rooms. For some added challenge, you can play the all max mode after completing the exit. Good luck in advance though, it's pretty difficult. The third part of the main game is Final Days. It's the most traditional FNAF style game mode in the entire game. You spend 5 nights in the same building as the exit, watching over the same rooms featured in said mode. The only difference here is that there are significantly less characters and threats to worry about. It's easy to get the hang of and can be beaten in less than a half hour. It's the shortest of the 5 main modes. Alright, this is where we switch to the director's cut version of 5 Shows at Wario's. This was released about 6 months after the initial game launched and served as a DLC, balance update, and the definitive 5 Shows at Wario's experience. I played the entire game on this version, but I thought I would clear up that from here on out, everything I'm going to talk about is only in the director's cut. The fourth main game mode is the Factory. You've been sent back to the original Five Nights at Wario's location to hide from the entities stalking the halls. The first day of the Factory is spent in the office, where you'll watch over Wario and Waluigi. Upon completing day 1, you'll be given 2 options where to hide next. This is like Five Nights at Wario's 3, where you're constantly switching rooms each night. Because of the 2 options, there are multiple different paths you can take which will each result in a different ending. I'll touch on this more later as it becomes more important, but before I can talk about that, I have to talk about the final main segment. Coliseum of the First is the final main game mode in 5 Shows at Wario's. However, it's completely non-canon and serves as a fun little extra. In the Coliseum, you'll have to eliminate waves of enemies using the characters you've unlocked to get money and buy upgrades. It's super fun and is in the same style as the final show. Worth playing if you have some spare time. Okay, here we are, the reason I wanted to even make this video. The endgame quest. If you chose to hide in the bathrooms for day 3 of the factory and beat the night, you'll be put into the machinery room. And once completed, you'll be prompted to day 5. At the start of the day, you'll be asked to open 5 Nights at Wario's alongside your current game in 5 Shows at Wario's. Doing this will start the night, giving you 2 perspectives, one from the office and the other from the cellar. Your goal is to use the cameras in 5 Nights at Wario's to determine when an enemy is outside your door in 5 Shows at Wario's. This idea is super cool, and I don't even know how the hell this was accomplished. It's so cool to think about. That's not all. You have to use elements from 5 Shows at Wario's, such as the battery charge, to send batteries to 5 Nights at Wario's. It works well, and I absolutely love it. Keep in mind that these are 2 separate applications working together at the exact same time. It's just super impressive, and it feels amazing to play. Once you complete the day, you will unlock access to the endgame quest. Before I talk about it, I should mention that I don't know much about the story, but I value my own sanity, so I'm holding off for now. Maybe one day I'll come back to it. The endgame quest is a cross-game ARG that is meant to be the grand finale to 5 Nights at Wario's. It's a 7-part quest that utilizes a different aspect of every 5 Nights at Wario's game, so in order to play it, you must download the entire series. Which isn't necessarily a bad thing, it gave me an excuse to try each of the games out, something that I surprisingly hadn't done up until that point. I'm not going to bore you with the specifics, so I'll give you the highlights. The first step of the endgame quest has you replaying the theater, but in a hellish nightmare setting. The shows are completely altered to fit the theme and the tone of the endgame quest. Oh, I should probably introduce you to the main antagonist. This is Entity 01. He's essentially the devil. Okay, jumping ahead to the end of the endgame quest where you actually fight him. The fight is similar to fighting Demon Wario all the way back in the theater, but now it's an actual fight. Entity 01 has 2 phases. You are given about 20 lives for the entire fight. Your main objective is to hover your mouse over the charge button and deal damage to Entity. This is easy until the charge button starts moving around, and then it becomes a balancing act of trying to charge whenever possible, while also avoiding projectiles. After shocking Entity enough, he finally dies, ending 5 Nights at Wario's as we know it. The endgame quest was definitely the highlight of the game for me. It felt like the ultimate send-off for the series, even if I don't fully understand the implications of it yet. 5 Shows at Wario's just in general is one of the greatest experiences I've had with a fan game so far. Everything this game has to offer is near perfection. There is still so much to talk about with this game. I decided to leave some of that out of this video as you wouldn't have a reason to actually play it yourself. Anyway, that's about it from me. See you in another 8 months when rent's due.